back to another episode of Let's Screw Some Shit Up. I mean, let's fix some air conditioners. Okay, so the question was, how long do you let it sit with nitrogen in it for a leak test, or how long do you leave it under vacuum to see if you have a leak? The answer is easy, at least a couple minutes. Your gauges should really be a great indicator of what you've got going on. As you're looking at your gauges, we are still under a vacuum for our little water test that we did, and so you should check your gauges at least once a week to see if they are leaking off. Okay, so I can easily bring that back to zero. With gauges like this, it's got this little plug right here. You're gonna make sure that you don't have a vacuum or pressure. Pop that off. A little screwdriver, a little thermostat screwdriver. You're gonna put that in there, and you're gonna line that back to zero. You're gonna zero out your gauge. So let's say you put 250 psi of nitrogen on that system. You're gonna watch both sides, okay? Because you have both hoses hooked up. You're gonna look at both sides, and you're gonna be going, if your high side starts going down, and then maybe your low side starts going down, you know it's on the high side. Look on your liquid line. Vice versa, if it's doing on this side, look on your suction side. Remember, your suction side is the largest tube, which is the hardest to solder, which is the one that you should solder first, because then you can get all the way around it without having that little liquid line in the way. You got that, then what's probably going to happen is on the bottom side of that, where you're having to stand on your head, lay in the mud while it's raining, and some dog's biting in the nuts, that's probably where your leak is. If it's not there, they'll be probably at the coil on the inside, and right there where if you bolted it onto the TXV or the metering device, there's that little O-ring. If you don't have that tight enough, start there, backtrack from there. But you should hear a serious hissing sound. That's definitely not 250 psi. You guys have heard me shoot the little cannon out, the dart gun, at 300 psi with a 3/4 inch hole. You know, that's a serious sound. You're going to hear it. A deaf guy like me can hear it. So, the answer is pretty much immediately you're going to know, but give it a couple minutes and you'll be able to find out. Your gauges, like I said, will tell you which side it's on. Any other great questions?
What do you usually pressurize it to?
I like to pressurize it depending on the system. Let's say it's a 410A system. A normal average operating pressure is about 250 to 300 psi, easy. So if I pressurize it to its normal operating pressure, then that leak is going to easily be found. I don't want to pressurize a R22 system to 400 psi. That's maxing out the coil. Okay, you want to look at what you're going for. In all these coils, they'll have a max pressure on the name tag on the outside of the case. Okay, stay below that. No sense to really waste a lot of nitrogen. If it's a 400 psi range, I'm going to tell you at 250, that's a lot of pressure. But let's say we're talking really low, like 134A. So let's take a look at a 134A. Right there, you got your chart right there. 134A at 100 degrees. You guys get
134A over there.
Flip the page, on the other side. If any of you guys want to find your PT chart, you've got one on your EPA book.
134A at what degree?
At 100 degrees, probably close to the bottom.
124.
144 PSI. You're definitely not going to be putting 250 PSI in a 134A system, right?
124. 124.
Yeah, 124. So, still, you're not putting 250 PSI. That is a ridiculous amount of pressure for that system. We would consider that as a lower pressure refrigerant. Okay? R12, once again, R11, which R12 has been banned for many years, and R11 we don't use anymore. But you can see there's a whole lot of refrigerants that are very low pressure that we use. Okay? These new refrigerants coming out, I am, like, once again, I'm not very well versed on them. You know, when you play with something for 20 years, you kind of get well versed on it. Now they change everything on you, and I go from 22 to 410. Now I go to the next refrigerant. I'm gonna have a learning curve just as much as you guys. So the cool thing is, as you get into the new refrigerant, if you guys take a few minutes each day, start researching these new refrigerants right now while you're learning, when they hit the market, you will have more knowledge than the seasoned technicians that are trying to figure this out. Survey says
That's something to be wondering.
So, is there?
Hey. Yeah. Hang on just a sec. Let me. Alright, we are back. So we're talking about subcooling, saturated heat, superheat. When we're looking at this, what we are trying to find as far as our tests that we do, you know, can we see electricity? That's why we really need voltmeters and amp meters to be able to test things so we know what's going on with something that we can't see. Can we really see refrigerant? It's inside a copper tube, right? Can't really look through the copper tube and go, oh, there it is. Can't really see pressure. Can't really see heat. We can see results of heat, but we can't see heat, you know, or lack thereof. So what we're having to do is run these tests. The tests will give us the answers that we can put it together, okay? On the very last page of all your books is my up and down arrow thing where you can go through. And so what we're needing to do is to be able to compare the information that we create off of our suction pressure, our discharge pressure, our superheat, our subcooling, our indoor split, and the amps that the compressor is drawing. Okay? Just 6 little tests. And you know, you're getting your suction and discharge pressure and your subcooling superheat all at the same time. If you hooked your gauges up and you're pulling temperatures from both sides at the same time, you have all the information. Okay? When you have all 4 of those, all you need to do is to let the system run for just a little bit. Because what we need is for the duct work to be tempered correctly, most of our ductwork here in Arkansas runs through the attic. So in the middle of summer, it's probably gonna get a little warm, right? We want enough air conditioning to run through that pipe to cool it off, to make it to where it's going to not be stupid hot and changing our temperature difference, okay? So you're gonna let it run for at least 5-10 minutes, depending on where you find your information. You know, here's my easy thing. If I do all my checks from the inside, go to the outside and come back to the inside, if you've gotten there in less than 10 minutes, you're Speedy Gonzalez, okay? Because remember, I'm gonna start with my filter and my thermostat. If I turn it on there and go outside and the system's running, it's been 2 or 3 minutes by the time I go from here to find the condensing unit outside. Then I'm hooking up my gauges and hooking up my amp clamps and getting everything set and letting everything settle down. Okay? I'm gonna look through my tool bag. I'm gonna find my temperature gauge. Whether you're using one of those toys, one of the little laser guns, and you know, you're going through and shooting shooting the ducts and seeing what the fake numbers are. All you're really doing, this is great for finding a temperature difference. It's not accurate, but it's accurate enough to go, there's 15 degrees difference between here to there. Perfect. Okay? It can read in its range where it's calibrated at. Calibrated. You know, because there's no calibration on this. What you have on this, you have Fahrenheit and Celsius, you have a place to put a battery, you have whether or not you see the backlight and whether or not you see the laser beam. Okay? That's everything on this one. It will tell you right here that its accuracy is variant on the distance away and the size of the area. Okay? So if you're trying to pinpoint one little thing from back here, you're not going to get it. You're going to get within that range, and you guys can probably see it a whole lot better than I can because that's some pretty small writing of what it says there on the side, on the other side. But what you're looking for is just the temperature split there, okay? And then the last one, the amp reading. Okay, so we did that last semester. You know what you're gonna do is you're gonna put the amp clamp on one side, preferably not the side that goes to the, play a little dare in here, it starts with a C. Call it capacitor. Because the capacitor will interfere with it and mess with your amp drum a little bit. I'd rather go from L1 instead of L2. Okay? And I say that with confidence, saying that almost every unit I've ever worked on, L1 does not go to the capacitor, L2 does. If you're on 3-phase, does it matter? No, there's no capacitor. Okay? That's the beauty of 3-phase motors. They are basically like their own capacitor, and so you don't have to worry about that. You can clamp it on 1, 2, or 3. When you get all that information and you put it in your manual algorithm there, you're going to be able to see potentially what's wrong. Can there be more than one thing wrong? Oh yeah. Especially if anybody has ever serviced it. Potentially if anybody has ever installed it. Potentially if anybody has ever been involved. Because human error is real. Okay? Remember what I said when we went down and looked at the ammonia building and The maintenance guy said, oh, it's wired correctly, it's wired correctly. I said, yeah, but I can't rely on the last idiot that was here. No offense, I'm not really trying to call you an idiot, but I call everybody an idiot. Because that last idiot that messed something up, I have to verify if he messed it up or if he did it right.
Oh, you broke the cord.
Get out of here.
I
Yeah.
swear. You throw like a girl. You should throw more like that. But anyway, the thing comes down to this. You are not going to rely on anything to be reality that you didn't verify yourself. Oh my gosh, I give you the perfect opportunity. I will never let you do that again. The one and only chance. All right. So, as we're looking through this, and we are going to take tests on this book, by the way. We're going to do a cahoots, and there's going to be specific information on these pages. I'm going to take stuff straight from these pages. So if you guys are not reading this book,
If they watch the video.
just sitting here watching the video, you're not going to get shit. Okay, and I'm going to know exactly who. And instead of trying to go through here, because we've already done most of that part. Okay, so let's talk about refrigerant glide. Okay, so it's going to be right here. Okay. It's on the big roof. On there. The one you got there.
This one?
Yeah. That's about 30 pages in, I'm gonna guess. Yeah. Okay, the absolute value of the difference between the starting and the ending temperatures of a phase change within a constant pressure. What does that mean? Any thoughts? Kind of sciencey, right? Let's break it down to regular, plain old redneck English. So, when you're looking at it, think about it as when you start turning the water from a liquid to a vapor. That is its glide. That whole latent work through that it's not changing. Okay? So, remember, some refrigerants are a mix. 410A, yada, yada, yada. Okay? Those are changing unevenly. That's your refrigerant glide. Okay? So, let's talk about a very bad no-no. Is there such thing as a drop-in refrigerant? Let's say R22, you can't get R22 anymore, you get a R22 replacement, and they call it a drop-in replacement. Is that true? A lot of no's. You're correct. Because what does drop in mean? It means you can just add it to it, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you remember what it says in the EPA, it says you cannot blend any refrigerant. You are not legally allowed to blend refrigerants. You can't go out here and make your own cocktail of refrigerant. You have to buy a refrigerant blend from the manufacturer that's done by their scientists. Okay? So, you can't go in and grab some 407 and throw it in place of R22 with R22 still in there. You just committed a felony. Okay? The other side of it, refrigerant glide. Who has the chart of refrigerant glide on however much refrigerant that you added in wrong versus what was right? Who's going to know that? Nobody. Nobody has a clue. You just screwed up the whole system. The only way to fix it properly and to get true information is remove all the refrigerant, have it off to be destroyed. All right, about $1,000. Probably increasing in price now. Now it's getting the jug to send it off. My gosh, you can't hardly find a recovery cylinder anymore.
Actually, question: how would you diagnose if someone did mix in the system?
That chart sitting right next to your left elbow. That PT chart. That PT chart will tell you what refrigerant is in there. Is 407 on your chart?
407C.
Okay. And so look at 70 degrees. What is your PSI?
141 or 117.
I'm sorry, 141?
Yeah, 141 at bubble.
Okay. 141. And look at R22.
70 degrees, that is 121.
Okay. There you go. If it's not 141 or 122, you know it's a mixture of the two.
Okay, easy enough.
You're going to go through your chart. You're going to find, you're going to look at what's supposed to be in there according to the nameplate. Now, if we're in refrigeration, we can find and you can put multiple different refrigerants into a refrigeration system. Sometimes you can put 404, you can put 134, you can put this, you can put that. And no, I'm not being serious. I know you can't put 404 and 134 in the same unit. So don't give me any crap. But I'm just saying, you have to look on the nameplate, and if it has different refrigerants that are named there, you have to go through there, and if somebody didn't write that on there and imprint on there, create some kind of message for the next person, you need to be verifying what refrigerant's in there before you think about adding refrigerant. Okay? So you're going to hook up, you're going to look at it, and you're going to go, oh, well, it's supposed to be 404, but it's not the same pressure as 404. You can't be running your unit while you're trying to get that pressure. Your unit has to be off. Now, what makes it really good, I'll tell you the beautiful, beautiful, beautiful best way to do this. You hook up your gauge while it's not off and it's been off, not on, and it's been off for just a little bit, okay? And what you're going to do is run the condenser motor. If you run the condenser fan motor, and it's going to circulate the outdoor air. So you're going to take an ambient outdoor air temperature. One of the reasons why it's really awesome to have it on your voltmeter, on your calibrated voltmeter, the calibrated temperature, you can go, oh, it's 70.1 degrees. Great. And you run it through there, let it run for about 5 minutes so it all stabilizes out, and then you take your pressure reading. You're going to know off of your pressures what the pressure is inside that condenser unit. By knowing that, then you can go, oh, it's this refrigerant, or oh, crap, okay? By going, oh, crap, you made a big discovery that's probably a problem that they're having in the first place. Now, I've had somebody accuse me of mixing refrigerant in a system before. They had me come in and do a refrigeration system on what used to be a box trailer, a box of a little delivery truck, okay? The reefer unit on that truck had gone out. They took the whole box off and they actually stuck straight on the ground, sitting frame on some pavers, and then they replaced that box with a new box, a new reefer unit. And the guy hired me to put a refrigeration system back into it. And I said, well, that's easy. Why don't we just use a walk-in style refrigeration unit? Because he was wanting to use the diesel-powered reefer unit for a truck. And I'm like, those are too expensive. You're gonna have to come by here every few hours and put diesel fuel in it, and that's a lot of mess, you know? And he goes, okay. I said, now here's the problem that you're gonna have. I said, you're gonna need to replace the seals on the doors. Okay, that's number one. And number two, if you ever watch a reefer unit, when they are delivering at a restaurant or like Come and Go or something, if they've got frozen foods that they're taking into that location, you're gonna see this big blue, look like a gym mat. And usually accordions up. And they take that down and they move it to the next batch for their delivery, okay? So when it's up there, it's barricading all the cold to go to that roll-up door, because that roll-up door can never, never, never be sealed. Each one of those joints going together is not like this, it's like this. Okay? But when they get together, it's not even as good as a garage door in your car, or in your house rather. That garage overhead door in your house has little divots in it that mesh together and kind of lock in place. And when it comes down, the pressure of the door pushing down on it, the gravity holds it all together. Well, an overhead door in a truck has this little gasket on it that the third time it's used, it probably gets torn. All right, so you got that. It doesn't really have as much gravity on it, because if you ever gone to the back of an overhead door in a truck and you just barely lift up, they shoot up real quickly because they have so much spring tension on them, because they're designed for manually lifting it. It's not designed for an overhead door to lift that. All this air seeped in, moisture, freeze up, all kinds of problems. I was trying to help him. I kept on telling him he had to do all these things. Well, he didn't believe me. He hired somebody else to come out and take a look at it. That other person said that, oh, guess what? You don't have you don't have the right refrigerant in there. You have a mixture of refrigerant. Well, the funny part was, the 404 that was in that unit was the only refrigerant I owned at that time. I didn't have any other refrigerant. It was in the winter time. I was already out of R22 and 410A, which are my two main refrigerants I use. And the 134A that I actually did have was up here at the school. I said, hey, the only refrigerant I even have in my vehicle is 404. And that's the refrigerant I purchased for your job. I bought 2 jugs. I used almost 1 full jug doing your job, and I wanted a backup jug just in case anything went wrong. And the guy still accused me. He said, the other guy said, and I'm like, well, unless the manufacturer put 2 different blends of refrigerant in that bottle, it didn't happen. Okay. Moral of the story is, every time somebody comes out to check another person's work, I guarantee they're gonna say that something major's wrong. We're kind of like a bunch of drummers. There's no time you're ever gonna see one drummer that thinks another drummer is really awesome. Because that other drummer just showed them up. Okay? You don't see a lot of guitar playoffs, do you? Hey, you see Battle of the Drummers, don't you? See it all the time. You can go on YouTube right now, Google drum off, and there's like marching band battles, there's drummers that play against each other, there's guys that just play snare drum against each other, and they try to play better and faster and cooler than the other guy. And when it's all over, somebody is butthurt. Because everybody's got too much pride. That's heating their world. That is what you're going to deal with. And so, they accused me of blending refrigerant. Well, when I requested the refrigerant that's taken out of it, I said, don't worry about it. Don't pay the $1,000. I'll take responsibility of the refrigerant. The other company had accidentally misplaced the jug and didn't know where it was.
That's a classic.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So, you're going to get into different things, but you're going to need to know Glide for some specific reasons, okay? Glide is very specific on specific refrigerant blends. This is also why we don't take vapor out of a blended refrigerant. We were talking about this yesterday. We were talking about how you turn the jug upside down, you take that liquid off. You don't want to put liquid in the system. That's why we're using that nozzle that turns it into a vapor, or valve it through your gauge. Okay?
Maybe we still need some.
Do I need to check your temperature?
Yeah.
All right.
Everyone's going down with me.
All right, so the next page off of that is this funny looking loop thing, okay? And this funny looking loop thing is one of those things that I just learned how to read. I had never read one of those before. As a indoor comfort cooling specialist, you can say pretty simply that, hand grenades, horseshoes, nuclear warfare, and air conditioning. You gotta get close. Okay? Now, with these communicating systems, high efficiency systems, trying to get everything dialed in, we need to be serious. Refrigeration has been serious for years. They have been reading these for years, okay? And I know you cannot read half the crap on this, okay? So, what I'm going to simply bring it to you is what you're going to find is you're going to have your pressures on one side and your temperatures on another side, and you're going to be able to find these 4 points, and you're being able to plot out 4 different locations on that chart, okay? If you look at the very top, the top line is your condenser, bottom line is your evaporator, the left side is your expansion, and the right side is your compressor, because the pressure is going up, right? From 1, that's your intake on your compressor. 2, that's your discharge on your compressor. The discharge on your compressor is the same as the pressure going into your expansion valve. It's the same pressure all the way through. Okay? and then it's going to go from your expansion valve and drop in pressure the second it goes through it, through your expansion valve, going into your evaporator. That hole right there, that one whole side where it says expansion, between 4 and 5, that whole thing is the expansion. Okay? And from 5 back to 1, that is your evaporator. Your pressures stay the same all the way through your evaporator, all the way through your condenser. There's no change there. The change in pressures happen at the compressor, at the expansion valve. Only 2 places. Okay? Temperature changes happen in the condenser and the evaporator. And that's where you're going to see that curve at. Okay? Is that clear as mud? You're out in the field, you're running this, and you're trying to figure something out, and somebody's trying to ask you about your enthalpy. Dyslexic, you can't say things normally first time around, but you try to find your enthalpy on your enthalpy chart. That is how you're going to plot it out. And we're going to do some practices on enthalpy here in the lab. We're gonna do it right. We're gonna do it wrong. You know, we're gonna read it right on the chart, but we're gonna have some that are really screwed up out here, and that you're gonna be able to use this on. Okay. Where are you gonna use this most at? On the things that are the most delicate. Refrigeration. This is much more loose of a thing, of an idea, of a concept on air conditioning. Shut up, I know. Okay? Yes, there are guys in comfort cooling that use this all the time. That's great. I commend them. They're awesome. Okay? Am I telling you guys that you're going to do it every time? No. If this whole side of the class is doing nothing but comfort cooling, and you're only working 16 weeks a year, I guarantee that if you're working less than 12 to 14 hours a day, everybody's going to call you a slacker, including me. Okay? 12 to 14 hours a day, they're going to try to give you 20 service calls. Didn't say you're going to get to them. I said they're going to try to give you 20 service calls a day. That means they're going to try to get you to do 2 service calls per hour. Well, I mean, honestly, you can't even drive from one to the next in less than an hour. Along with diagnose them, along with service them, and get the parts either repaired or replaced or whatever you need to do there. You know, even if they were all just bad filters, you could not do 20 service calls in 14 hours. Hour minimum per service call, plus drive time. Okay, so when do you sleep in a 24-hour day if you're working at least 14 hours? Because remember, you gotta eat, you gotta at least kiss your wife on the cheek, and you gotta take a shower because you freaking stink after 14 hours of work. Okay, so if you only eat 1 time a day, you take an hour to get dressed and take a shower, and you take an hour for your personal self, see your wife, see your kids, whatever. Okay, so we're talking out of 24 hours, now you're 21 hours minus 14 hours, you only got 5 hours of sleep. And not everybody in this room is like me, and an insomniac and a morning person. Hell, if I get 5 hours of sleep, I'm awesome. Last night I went to bed at 10:30. My wife couldn't believe it. Oh, I got up at 7:15 this morning. Okay? Night before, I went to bed at 2. Guys at 715. You didn't see any difference in me, did you? Still crazy, energetic, crazy motherfucker. Same guy. Doesn't matter how much sleep I get. Alright. So, let's take a quick break. And we're back. So, what we're going to be talking about now is we're going to go into the compressor section. Okay? You're going to see a picture that looks like so. There's a lot of information there, great information to learn how to look up the Copeland compressors, Emerson, Copeland information, and that's awesome. But as far as you guys learning this stuff, we'll learn it first, and we'll come back to the cool stuff later. Okay, so we're going to learn how an engine works. Okay, basically, engine, compressor, same difference. Okay, what's going to happen is you're going to have the low pressure coming in, high pressure going out, right? Two different sides. You're going to have a valve that controls it. I was asking me about valves earlier. This is exactly where that valve comes in place. So, what's going to happen is there is a valve to keep from the high pressure bleeding back to the low side. And there's also another valve on the other side of the head that's going to have the high pressure of the line from bleeding back into the cylinder when the piston goes down. Okay? Now this is a reciprocating compressor. That piston is going to go up and down. We call this top dead center, or TDC. When it is top dead center, that means that piston is all the way up. It's on a crankshaft, just like a crank on a bicycle. When it's all the way up, not partially cocked one way or the other, straight up and down, piston is all the way up, that's top dead center. That is one of the most important positions you should know. If it's a multi-piston system, you need to know which cylinder that they're calling number one. I don't care if this is on a car, compressor, or a intergalactic spaceship. You need to know which cylinder is number one. Okay? As long as it's going to be a reciprocating compressor, you need to know which cylinder is number one. And when that one is top dead center, we call that number one top dead center. Kind of crazy how we call it something like that, right? But when you're at top dead center, you're probably going to have alignment markings and everything. When you think taking things apart, putting things back together, that's going to be important. Checking your valves. Top dead center is important. Okay? So, what we're going to see if you go to the next page where you turn it sideways is you're going to have your four sides. You have top dead center, suction. Okay? So, what's going to happen is when that piston goes down, it's going to create a low pressure situation. When it's at top dead center, let's say your suction side is at 70 psi. Okay? If it is at 70 psi, or pounds per square inch, okay, that means once that area inside that piston chamber goes below 70, that refrigerant on the suction side, on your low side, is going to go into the cylinder chamber. That's how that works. Okay? It's got a little spring action there that's going to be regulated to the operating suction pressure. So in other words, if your low pressure side valve is weak, or if the pressure on that side is way too high, it's going to start causing problems. It's very, very mechanically simple driven. Okay, so it's going to go down. you're going to fill with refrigerant that chamber up, okay? It's gonna go all the way down to bottom dead center, and then it's gonna start a compression stroke. So, as soon as it hits bottom, it's done filling with refrigerant, okay? Because once they equalize, that valve's gonna pop back close. When it starts coming back up, when it goes past bottom dead center, it's going to make that turn past that center, and it's going to create compression. From that point, from 1 degree past bottom dead center, all the way up to top dead center, that's going to be a compression stroke. Once it has reached past that 250 pounds, 250 PSI of your high side, it's going to pop open that other valve, and it's going to press it in there. Okay? Now, if this is a single piston driven, and it's going, what do you think your gauge is going to look like?
Go up and down.
It's going to go. Okay? If you got 2 pistons and they're offset from each other, it's going to even that more, right? You can see many different styles. If you have a flutter in your gauge and you don't know what type of compressor you've got, you might probably have a compressor that has a reciprocating compression going on. Okay? If it is a scroll compressor, it will be all linear. Remember that scroll compressor is that ring that looks like it's going to look like a screw with another ring that looks like a screw, and they're going to be working and they're wobbling around in there, and we're going to see that here in just a little bit, and they're just squeezing, and it's always going. Okay, the twin screw is like that supercharger is running together, and it's always going the same pressure. So it's going to be pretty much only in the reciprocating compressor you're going to find that flutter on your high side. The low side should be fairly straightforward, but you'll see a flutter on your high side. Now, other times when it's not a reciprocating compressor and you see that flutter, you're going to know there's a problem. Okay? All right, so we can go through on the next page. It will show you the following of, it's trapping the refrigerant in there. Now, you have a slight bit of re-expansion. Right after top dead center, there's that 1 fraction second of re-expansion, because there's that trapped amount of refrigerant that's in there that didn't meet up to the thresholds of that valve. Okay, it didn't get everything through there. There's going to be a little bit. So once that piston goes past there to come back down, it's going to pop it down just slightly, and then the electric motor will take over and start pulling it down. Once it starts pulling it down, then the pressure from the low side is going to press it down again. Okay? It is one of those things where the refrigerant that it's pumping, it is doing the work to pump it. There's also another thing that the refrigerant that it's pumping is also assisting in the operation of the downstroke. That re-expansion and then the downward force with the low side pressure forcing into it is going to help push that piston down. So if you got a dual piston system, if this one's going down while this one's going up, the refrigerant's helping push this one down, push this one down, push this one down, push this one down. okay? And so it's going to help assist it. That's the whole thing that you need to really think about is the way to understand this is as far as a vehicle, you want to take this and make this motor and engine, is you put a spark plug in the dang thing, and instead of just putting low pressure air in there, you also add fuel, and then when it's just past top dead center, you know, like that re-expansion little thing where it's just starting, okay, you pop that spark plug, create a spark, and the fire will drive that piston down. Then when it comes up, it will compress all that gas and blow out the exhaust. Pretty much all these are the same principles of a flathead Ford. The one we've got sitting out there on the bench looks so much like a flathead Ford, it is ridiculous. It's got the reed valve just like the old flathead Ford and everything. Okay? And it is so crazy to think how the two really come together. You know, we can, if you can work on one, you can work on the other. All right. So if we go to the next page, we're talking about the bottom stroke, top stroke, center compression. Okay. So what we're going to look at is in that picture, you're going to see the pressures on the top, but look at the middle of that. Okay. In the middle of that yellow, there's those arrows pointing side to side. That thing is called a wrist pin. Okay. If this is the piston, this is the rod. There's your wrist pin. I wonder where they come up with this idea, this terminology. Okay. When you are pushing and pulling on this, if there's any deflection one way or the other, with the pressure going one way or the other, you've got the side to side of that wrist. Okay? When it's going up and down, you have problems right here. This is where your rod and your piston will start getting sloppy. Okay? Right there at the wrist pin. You're going to have problems there. That's a wear point. That's a beautiful example, beautiful description of what you're seeing there is because of the fact that when it's off kilter, it's floppy.
Sorry to bother you. I found these in the shop. You want me to keep them by the door?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thanks, sir. If you're looking at this and going, okay, so the pressure rattling back and forth and going up and down, it's going to start making wear. You start making wear on there, it's going to do it more. It's going to do it more. It's going to do more. Okay. Next picture on the top dead center, it's going to show you right there where that track gas. Basically, these pictures are just big pictures of the small picture. Okay? And this is going to go right through into talking about that. We're going to go all the way and we're going to get to the discus compressor. Okay? That's new style. We're talking new technology at this point. We're getting away from the flathead Ford-ish. Okay? So, this new discus style, that is a cool thing that reduces that little gap point right there. Okay? There, instead of having that little gap of refrigerant that's still left in there, that removes it, which keeps it from trying to go backwards at that recompression. Okay? And so it keeps from having nearly as much resistance, and it lets the whole operation go a lot smoother. Now, as a gearhead, I go, that's cool. Alright, and so next page is gonna show you how that's gonna operate. How the trapped refrigerant, as it comes up to the top, what's gonna end up happening is it's showing you that disc in that flat open phase where it's escaping up to the sides. When it gets all the way to the top, the spring is on the back side of that disc, which is the valve. And as soon as it gets up there and stops moving, that whole thing slides down. As it slides down, it still allows any trapped refrigerant to scoot up the side. And it seals up at the bottom. When it seals up at the bottom, it's flush with the piston. It has removed the most amount of refrigerant that it can. Okay? The very next page has this little squirrely thing at the bottom here. That is reciprocating or a scroll compressor. Okay? Basically, you have a positive and negative image, just like a mold. Okay? You got one that screws one way and one screws the other way. They fit inside of each other. One is firmly mounted and doesn't move. The other one is moved on the shaft, mounted on the shaft of the electric motor, and it oscillates. Okay? By it oscillating, it takes the refrigerant and pushes it around the corner between the two pieces of material. It's squeezing it like this. Okay? It's just rolling it through. And it rolls it through to the next section. That part rolls it through the next section and rolls it through the next section. It just rolls it around until it gets to the end. Now, these have a much more forgiving atmosphere with liquid refrigerant because there is some slop. If there is liquid that can't be compressed, instead of it binding up, it can just simply squeeze past the two sides of the wall, of the inner and the outer wall. It can squeeze past there and allow that liquid refrigerant to bypass. That's how we can put liquid refrigerant into a scroll compressor and not explode it, for the most part. At some point, it will. You compare this to the picture right above it. Think about if we had liquid refrigerant in that piston there that can't be compressed, trying to shove it up through that valve. At some point, we know it creates pressure, right? That means that that valve opening has to be small enough that it's creating some type of pressure. In this situation, it's not just a pump. It's not just pumping against the far end. It's pumping against that head, and it's creating pressure. By it doing so, if that was liquid, at one point, it's going to destroy parts. Probably the piston, probably the rings on the piston, probably the wrist pin, probably the rod. Okay? So that's how these work. And if you jump into the next picture, it's a bigger version of what we're looking at, with the bottom picture going to be a full view of it. Okay? As you're looking at that, I'm going to show you the low pressure coming in, the high pressure in the center, and you're going to have the discharge at the very top. You look at that bottom picture where it's showing you how it's going in there. Okay? So basically what you've got the refrigerant that comes in here and it floods all down in here. Okay, so the reason why we're going to come in and flood all down here where this motor is why? Any thoughts? No thoughts whatsoever.
Cool.
It is the thing that keeps that electric motor cool? Part one. Part two.
So that's as a lubricant?
The lubricant for it, for this whole system, travels with refrigerant.
Okay.
Okay? It travels with refrigerant. This is redepositing the oil back to the compressor motor. Very, very important. We also do not want the oil to act like a bird and migrate. We do not want this oil really going throughout the whole system. The only thing that needs oil in this whole thing is that right there. It's just right there, all those bearings and stuff, that's where the oil needs to stay. But we can't really make that happen. They haven't figured that out yet. When they do, things will get better, okay? And so what's gonna happen is it's going to put our low pressure there. It's gonna be open to the scroll, put it into the scroll, squeeze it up through there, and squirt it out through the center top. Center top is your check valve, unless it gets damaged. And it's gonna squirt it out through there, and it's gonna immediately exit. Okay? The pressure that it's keeping the top to the bottom, a lot of it is the pressure of the refrigerant on the top of it. Okay? The pressure from the system, the pressure from, so that means at some point, when all the pressure is released, these two plates release from each other just a little bit, they balance out. Okay? So, why do we have that obnoxious, idiotic, retarded 5-minute delay?
Keep it from hard starting.
Keep it from hard starting, yes. And let me explain what hard start is, if you guys don't understand. If you already have pressure on one side, and you relieve the pressure from the other side, and then you try to repressurize it. Okay, so pretty boy, you and I are gonna arm wrestle. Okay? I'm high pressure, you're low pressure, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna be going at it, and all of a sudden, you're gonna let off pressure. You're gonna just turn off. And I'm gonna be running you down to the ground, and at the last second, you're gonna try to kick back in. What's the chances I break your arm? Pretty high. Okay? That would be a stupid thing to do. If people don't understand, many people that arm wrestle wrong end up with broken arms. And that would be a perfect explanation of why. Because when I'm putting that torque pressure to go down, and you relieve pressure, and then you went back, but I've already got momentum. That momentum will annihilate your startup torque. And your startup torque here on the table, your elbow, and your body's torquing, you're going to have a catastrophic failure right about here. Okay? This right here, I want you to think about it. What is this? This is your piston. This is your wrist pin. There's your rod. You want to know why the rod snaps on engines? Catastrophic failure of the rod destroys things. Now, on a scroll compressor, that rod is the shaft that's going up the connecting between the electric motor and that scroll. Okay, that's its rod. That's where its centrifugal force is coming in. Okay, now this will make more sense. You know, I tell you guys about the carrier package unit that I had in here, that it was failure on startup. I said that I think what they did was they held that button in there, got it up to pressure, let it off, and then that thermostat kicked in, and as soon as that thermostat kicked in, it was probably about 300 PSI. The other side had just released its pressure off, and then BAM! Snap that rod.
What was the thing called?
This is your rod. So on an engine, you got your crank, which is going to be connected here, your rod, your wrist pin, and your piston. Okay, now we can start getting some awesome high-sided features. Okay, you want to start knowing what size compressor you need for your system. This is where you start getting into this. Guess what? We're not engineers. What compressor are we going to use?
Oh, that fits.
The one that the manufacturer plates calls for, right? If we come back and revisit this in 3 years, and you guys are doing some continuing education and trying to become a master technician, that's when we're going to revisit this. I'm going to give you this information now so that when somebody that you're working with a master technician that you're working with is trying to figure something out, grab this book out. I want this book to go with you for years and years to come. It will probably get totally destroyed between now and when you're coming back and doing some continuing ed when I've got that bigger, better class going on. But if you can, between now and then, be going through this in real life, real world scenarios and looking at stuff, man, I have a former student named Zach that I swear that boy will have the most certifications of any of my students that's ever taken this class. He is awesome. He is, I at one point was, sorry, Zach, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. I was thinking I'd like to introduce him to my daughter. Then I found out he was married. You know, I just thought the world of this kid, and yeah, I still get to call him a kid even though he's a dad. You know, this guy will be that guy that I guarantee in just a few years people will be talking about him. You know, as I talk about David Stevenson, in just a few years people will be talking about Zach. Okay, that's my guarantee to you, because he's that guy that listened when I said all you've got to do is just a little bit each day, and all of a sudden you will be the authority. Here's roadmap for you to do a little bit. Okay, and so as you get into it, you know, it's got the whole thing for you guys to be able to read and understand how to do the math of this. Okay, so you know, this isn't my stuff. This is thank you to Emerson and Copeland Compressors for giving this information, for allowing me to give it to you guys. This is their stuff. They have, if you guys get a chance to take their class, take their class. It's awesome. Of course, what I'm saying is I am paraphrasing a lot of the things that they're doing because of the fact that that is really designed for technicians that have been in the field. Okay? Even if after 1 year of being in the field, you come back and take this class, oh my gosh, you will totally appreciate a lot more of this information. And so we're going to get into going to go right past compressor capacities. I want you to understand how to find it, how to read it. There's AHRI testing, which is done by the who? Done by the what? By the Slim Shady? Anyway, AHRI, FBI, CIA, government, yes. That is all government stuff. So this is engineers. We get into troubleshooting, where we are going to reside. Okay? yes, we gotta build our systems, but we also have to troubleshoot them. If we don't troubleshoot them, if we don't build them, then nobody's there, nobody's left. I'll tell you the serious answer for our unemployment rate and our reason why we have so many people that are don't have jobs and don't need jobs and everything. Most of the people in my industry make me look like a child. I am a young whippersnapper. Most of my guys I've looked up to, the majority of my trade is guys that are old. If you put in some kind of crisis, whether it is true or fictitious, and you tell those guys, you can't go to work. They've been working all their life and they got a crap ton of money built up and in their retirement. What do you think they're gonna do? They're gonna retire. They're gonna say, screw you guys, I'm going home. I'm gonna take my ball and I'm going home. I don't need your crap anymore. There is such a shortage of people in our trade right now as we speak. And it just got bigger. In the last few months, more people just said, screw off. Every month for the next 5 years, more people are gonna say, screw off. You guys are the next great hope. We're looking towards you guys to actually fill these spots. We want manufacturing to come back to this country. We want to turn this around. We want to have something here that we can pass on to our next generation. Without getting some serious service technicians that know how to do troubleshooting, it is all lost. Okay, so not to have a lot of stress on you, but there's a lot of stress on you. That's why this is when I get serious. This is when I'm going to go, we are going to do troubleshooting for the next January, February, March, April, 4 months. Okay? We're going to build systems quickly. We're going to get out there. We're going to have hands-on troubleshooting. But unlike what I've done before, we're going to talk troubleshooting before we go do troubleshooting. I have never set out a path like this before. So let's try it. Let's go through it real quick and see what we got. Okay? Just running through head pressures. You got different things going, and there's the outcome: low head pressure, mechanical damage, major restriction, low refrigerant charge, low ambient. Okay, real simple. If it's super cold outside right now and we're running our system outside and we run off of PT charts, we do a pressures and temperatures relation. If it's stupid cold out, you think outdoor temperature, ambient temperature is going to have something to do with it?
Yes.
Abso-freaking-lutely. Okay. We get back on the other side, on the high pressure, high ambient temperature. If it works for the cold, it works for the heat as well. Remember when I said earlier, or yesterday I believe it was, Rubitex for the suction line? We don't have to have Rubitex for the liquid line. In extreme situations, boom, right there. Sometimes you're gonna get into it. You're gonna diagnose things. You're gonna be like, man, we just have too much high ambient temperature in this area. Let's say you're doing a system and it's going through a mechanical room. I don't care if it's comfort cooling or if it's refrigeration. Let's say it's running through a mechanical room. And the mechanical room is running 160 degrees. Pretty hot. right? You got that liquid line exposed, running through there, it's going to lose its subcooling, won't it? Loses its subcooling. When it gets to that flash point, it's not going to have the energy to release out nearly as much as it was when it was subcooled. Simple as that. Okay? So if we insulated that and created that problem resolve, it may balance it out, go back to normal. Okay? Once again, going through that same mechanical room. What if in the wintertime it doesn't get that high? Let's say it's 14 degrees outside. Let's say that room is 40, 50 degrees with all the machinery running. It's now, it's normally running at, let's say 150 degrees through that liquid line. Even though it's subcooled, it's still 150 degrees going through a 100-foot room at 40, 50 degrees. All of a sudden, we're doing additional subcooling, which goes back to that low ambient temperature. Okay? Everything in this is like a science project. You have so many variables, you gotta eliminate the variables. Okay? Number one, most common thing, overcharged system. There's a guy out there I want you guys to all hate. His nickname is Gas and Go. There are many of them. That's the guy that runs up, says, oh, it's low on refrigerant. Throws some refrigerant in it, gasses it up, goes down the road. Gets the next one. Oh, it's low on refrigerant. Gasses it up, goes down the road. Oh, it's low on refrigerant. Gasses it up, goes down the road. I hate gas and goes. You should hate gas and goes. Those guys cause more damage, more problems, and more future problems than you can ever imagine. Okay? Number one. Number two is non-condensables in the system. This is that service technician that has dirty equipment. He doesn't, I know that people are going to tell you, oh, it's bad to vent off the stuff in your gauges. Well, I don't want to put the possible contaminants from one system to the other. Number one. Number two, I want to keep everything pressurized in my gauges until I get to the next one so it doesn't have a contaminant in it. Okay? Where did I go through the gauges? Over there. You don't want for your hoses to be dragging through the mud. You do not want water and stuff getting inside of here. I love these low loss fittings. I do not like the valves because it gives you a pocket, a recessed area for shit to collect. These are bad enough as it is, okay? This has a small little pocket for shit to collect, okay? I want you to think about this. This is like your belly button. How many of you guys do not wash your belly button? Even if you don't, you're not going to admit it right now, okay? But if you don't, I guarantee it stinks to hell and it's got shit in it, okay? There you go. That's the best way to think about this. You got pocket lint in there. You got all kinds of crazy shit. As soon as you disconnect from there, connect it to here. That's what those are for. These don't come off. You're all the time tightening, making sure these have good sealed connection. These, doesn't matter if they're sealed, I want them on there. I take it off of here, I immediately go on here. As you see, I don't put them on tight. I want to put them on like 3 or 4 turns, which 3 or 4 turns would probably be 2 or 3 full revolutions. Okay? And by doing so, that means it's going to have to work really hard to get something in there. When I take it off to connect it, you'll notice I usually take it off, shake it before I connect it. Because if there's anything in there, I'm gonna shake it loose. I don't want spiders in there. I don't want moisture in there. I don't want ants in there. I don't want anything in there. I need a sealed, tight system. Non-condensables is, for the most part, anybody? Bueller? Water! Wow, I wonder how you came up with that one. How many of you guys know what I meant by Bueller? Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Watch it. Okay. Dirty or blocked condenser. There's no heat exchange to the condenser. It's not going to condense, is it? Okay. Manufacturer malfunction of condenser fan. If it's not helping it move the air through, you've got too much heat at one time. Okay. Restricted water flow. What are we talking about there?
Can you repeat what you said?
Restricted water flow.
Your drainer? Do you elaborate?
Could definitely be your condensate line plugged up, having a problem, you've got water backing up. Could also be talking about refrigeration. Okay, we're not being very specific here. In a lot of refrigeration systems, instead of air cooled, they're liquid cooled. So they have a counterflow heat exchanger. Let's see here, I've got one right here. Counterflow heat exchanger. Okay, so you've got an in ski and an out ski for refrigerant ski and water ski. English is water goes in one side, comes out the other. Refrigerant goes in one side, comes out, goes in one side, comes out the other. They go opposite directions of each other. And cold water, hot water. Hot refrigerant, cold refrigerant. Okay? They don't touch each other. They're bypassing each other through these little plates in here. Could be a single tube. Could just be a tube inside of a tube. Outer tube is going to be your coolant. Inner tube is going to be your refrigerant. Okay? So, if it gets plugged up and you don't get the water to bypass it, it's not going to be cool enough. Just like if your condenser coil is packed up or your condenser fan motor is not working. As you can tell, I used to be a goalie hockey. Let's see here. We talked about high ambient, restricted, and restriction in your discharge line. Okay? So, when you have your line dryer, there it is. Your line dryer has a desiccant in it. This stuff right here is a filter dryer. And if you have a restriction, then it's going to create a problem. Okay, it's going to create a blockage, a backup. Easiest way to see if this is it is take a temperature reading on one side and take a temperature reading on the other side. If there is a lower temperature on this side, this has become a blockage problem.
Contaminant?
Huh?
Contaminant?
With the contaminants in it. But when we have a restriction in the line, we know it as we have a temperature drop from one side to the other.
Oh.
We'll play Darren, it's an M. Metering device. This now becomes a metering device. Because you have a restriction here. The restriction is now between here and the compressor. When this becomes a restriction and there's flow on the other side, we know it's a low flow. We know that there's less pressure on this side of it. because this is the blockage. This becomes a metering device, even though it's still in that small line. It's still metering through here. It's flashing through this line, and it's not liquid by the time it gets to the real metering device. You would be amazed how many times that happens. Okay? You're having a problem? You know one of the easiest ways to check this? A temperature device. God-given device that you had since you were a child. Touch. Now, don't grab anything like this, Ryan. When you grab something like this, your natural instinct is to pull away and grasp your hand. If you're already grasping it, then you're not letting go. The best thing to do is use the back of your hand.
Touched by hot water.
Yep. The cool thing about that is that now that I've got all this nerve damage in my fingers from all the refrigerant that I've messed with in my life, well before we got into that whole low loss, no loss fittings and stuff, you know, now I don't have much feeling here. I still have all that temperature feeling in the back of my hand. Okay? So I can put my hand on one side, my hand on the other side, and if I can sense a difference, we know it's a big problem. If you think that there might still be a problem and you didn't sense a difference, you can easily clamp your temperature gauge on there, and then it'll tell you within 0.1 degrees. Okay? Like once again with low head pressure, low charge. We talked about low ambient, mechanical damage inside the compressor, and a major restriction. Okay? Major restriction would be basically at some point there is no refrigerant going through. You got super high, you will probably have a super high head pressure and a super low side. You could get to the point where your high side is still low pressure because it's caught somewhere. Okay? Let's say your metering device is completely locked up and your filter dryer is completely packed full, and the volume of refrigerant is stuck between the two. Now even your high side's gonna be low. Okay? So when we're going through this, it is just going to be one of those things where we're just looking from one side to the other. If this, then this, and this, then this. Okay? We're looking a lot at airflow. Things frozen up. Is airflow going through? Do we have too high a heat? Do we have too low a heat? Okay? We have the non-condensables. We have any sort of these problems going into it. And you're going to look at this and you're going to go, wait, there's only 2 pages. I told you this is not hard. This is the answers. All of them. We go to that last page and we look at that troubleshooting, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 common results. Mild restriction, low charge, low indoor airflow, mild restriction, severe restriction, overcharge, low outdoor airflow, compressor valves are weak. We just went through 99.999% of everything you're gonna come across. This is what you guys need to understand is 1-843-6572. I love that look, Tony. When I was 6 years old, my brother looked at me and he said, you have to memorize this. 1-843-6572. It's the firing order of a small block GM engine. You need to memorize this. I don't care how you do it, with what trick, or if you have a little song, a little story, whatever, you know. People memorize the periodic table of elements and all kinds of stuff through the songs and stuff. I don't care what it is. But what you need to do is you need to memorize what some of these causes and effects are. You're gonna have high head pressure if you don't have airflow. Okay? That stuff right there will be the thing that you're gonna walk into some customer's house and they're looking for you to be able to be that guy. They're looking for Rain Man. Have you guys ever watched Rain Man? One. Okay, I can't even do my rant. You guys need to watch some old damn movies, okay? They're looking for that guy to come in here and just look at stuff and go, it's airflow. The problem's airflow. You need to change the air filter. You change the air filter. There you go. That's the whole. They're looking for that guy that's so freaking smart when he walks through the door that, you know, this beam of light comes from behind you, and the choir goes, oh, you know, that's what they're wanting. They do not want the guy that comes in here, my first day on the job, Monday morning, I'm hungover, what do you want? Yeah? That's not the guy they're looking for. They're looking for the guy that comes in and goes, yes ma'am, what's usually the problem today? Oh, my air conditioner, it's not working really good. And it's like, okay, well, let's see your thermostat. Oh, well, the thermostat's working good. Let's see your air filter. Holy crap. You know, let's tell you the importance of good clean air filters. And you pull that off of there and you go and check the system. It's frozen completely solid. You go, okay, so we're going to start defrosting this system. We're going to have a little problem when we start defrosting it. Your condensate line is going to get overflowed. I want you to think that every time a frozen system gets defrosted, it will overflow the pan. So if you rapidly defrost it, it's going to go everywhere and make a mess. Okay? If a chunk of ice gets in there and blocks that line, it's going to make a mess, right? If it's partially closed off, it's going to make a mess. If the whole piece of ice falls over to the side and it bypasses the pan, it gets down and shorts out the furnace, you got a problem, okay? So how can we create a bypass to this problem?
Defrosting it?
Defrosting it. We gotta defrost this ice before we leave, because if we leave and that ice defrosts, who is, no matter what the what is reality, who's the customer going to say is fault? You were the last one there. You probably also need to do more checking just to replace the air filter too, right? And probably every service call you have is, you know, you're in Fayetteville doing this, and every other service call you have is in Bentonville. So you can't really come back because you live in Silent Springs, right? Kind of a sucky setup, right? How can we defrost that system without having a problem with overflowing the pan and creating a big massive problem?
Do you pull a shop back with you and suck up water?
Man, that's a great idea. I love to put my shop vac outside at the condensate line.
Suck the air out quicker.
That way I'm sucking it out through the condensate line faster, exactly, and I'm cleaning the condensate line from any debris it has problem with. I'm killing two birds with one stone. I am creating the lack of need for me to come back for any reason in a very suspicious period of time. Okay? So how am I going to get the ice to melt? I got 20 service calls, remember?
Run the furnace.
Huh?
Run the furnace.
Run the furnace? Holy cow! That would be a great idea, wouldn't it? Okay? What happens if it's a heat pump?
Could keep a little heat torch.
Torches aren't
Run the heat pump?
Run the heat pump! Guess what? The heat pump's actually going to do a better job than the furnace because the heat pump is going to melt it from the inside out. It's just like when the heat pump is in defrost mode. Instead of being on the outside, it's going to be on the inside. Okay? So, with that thought, is there anything else you can think of you could do to help melt it?
Warm water.
You can do some warm water. You're gonna pour it on the coil in there, or what are you gonna do?
We've sprayed a lot of ones with just warm water from the inside.
And you got more water to deal with.
Put a fan on it.
Put a fan where?
Okay, I'm not.
No. You actually have an idea. I'm going to chase these down. There's not one correct answer. There's many correct answers. Where you gonna put the fan in?
I don't know.
Is there a fan already in the system?
Yeah.
Could you use that fan to
Yeah,
try to
totally.
circulate the air through the system to heat that? Because you only run the air conditioning when it's hot out. It's hot out, it's hot in the house. Hot in the house, it's definitely gonna be above freezing, right? Boom, fan. Come on. I'm not saying no to the water. My question is where? What did I say right before all that? With that being said, are there any other ideas? What did Jerry say?
Close off the condenser outside?
Wow, what if you use the condenser outside to take refrigerant to the inside? You could put some hot water on it if you want. The water is going to be an extreme case if it's frozen all the way to the outside and the condenser is frozen as well. You'll see that happen a lot. You can start with some water there to start defrosting it. Once you get it thawed out to where all that's defrosted on the outside, then what you can do is you can do one of two things. You can run the fan to circulate the hot air across the refrigerant to heat the refrigerant up. When the refrigerant outside is warm and the refrigerant inside is connected to the refrigerant outside through heat transferring copper tubing, and it's all connected together, you heat one part of it, it's going to slowly transfer to the other part, right?
Slowly though.
Huh?
Slowly though. Not a.
So, but if you're doing that while running the
Yeah,
furnace,
if you're combining it.
yeah.
afterwards.
See, I'm wanting to get in and out of every customer as fast as possible, and ice melting is not part of my job, Okay? What if, you know, if I'm looking at my high pressure and it says malfunction of condenser fan? What if I purposefully make a malfunction of that condenser fan? What if I unplug it and I run that compressor? Will it get hot?
Yeah.
Even by there, it's going to tell me it's high head pressure and it's going to get hot. I can manipulate that refrigerant. Probably don't want to run it non-stop or anything, but I can go out in there and run that furnace, have my shop vac on there, and hit that thing with some refrigerant, and I'll have my gauges hooked up. I'll be sitting there looking at my gauges, making sure I don't get in those dangerous sections, okay? I also don't want to create a situation where it's below freezing. So, in my PT chart, that's right here, what time are we at?
204.
204, okay. So my PT chart shows right here that my 32 degrees is roughly 100, 102, 103 PSI. You see that on there? 14A?
The
32 degrees is what? 101.
around there.
I'm going off of these big old lines here. That's pretty damn close for being able to eyeball it, right?
It's there's not really a.
Yeah, I know it doesn't show exactly 32, but if you got a really good PT chart, it will show you 31, 32, 33, 34. But the answer is, as long as I'm keeping it above 32 degrees, I'm starting to melt it, right? So as long as my suction side stays above 102, 103 PSI, we're good. I guarantee you pull that condenser fan motor off of there, it's going to go up. You want to watch your high side, you don't want to get too high. Okay? There's other tricks I'll talk to you about later, not in the entry level of it, but you can use your manifold gauge to augment your pressures. Okay? Easy thing about this, there are many ways to skin this cat. Cat's only got a little over a dozen answers. You only got a dozen cats, but there's many ways to skin it, okay? All right, let's take a quick break. All right, so let's try to wrap this up real quick so we can start getting out in the shop and getting serious on this, okay? So we're gonna kind of go through this electrical data, kind of go past there, service calls, okay. Common system checkpoints, system troubleshooting. We're all the way to, there's our chart, and if I can hold it up right, yep, there we go, trouble system. Okay. So, basically, right there on your left, our heat exchanger clean? Is there airflow? I mean, just gonna be, those are the things that you need to have in your mind. That's that part of, memorizing that stuff. And what you're gonna be looking at is on that system checkpoint review. Wow, very top left corner, check for temperature difference across dryer. We just talked about that, okay? If the system has a sight glass, almost all refrigeration systems will have a sight glass. Look for moisture, right there. You should also see it completely solid with liquid with no bubbles. Any question where we're at? We're looking at this picture. Okay, you got that one? It's about 2/3, there you go. Okay, so that sight glass should not have bubbles in it. All the refrigerant should have turned to a liquid halfway through that condenser coil before it got to that dryer. If that dryer has a temperature difference across it, it becomes a metering device, you'll have bubbles. If you are low on refrigerant, it'll have bubbles. If the condenser coils are plugged up or the condenser fan is, you'll have bubbles. So there's another great place to look. You know, it'll say, hey, I have a problem before here. Okay? Your metering device, you know, if you got subcooling at the metering device, you know you've got some stuff going on here. You're gonna clean the evaporator coils. They're not clean. You got to make sure you have a good temperature difference in versus out. You know, you create superheat coming through that coil. As you go through there into the compressor, of course, you got everything we've been talking about. You got good suction pressure, you got good discharge. You're going to be creating the pressure difference. What does it mean if you don't have any pressure difference between one side of the compressor to the other?
This compressor's not working.
Boom. Beautiful answer. You know, if that, let's say that the capacitor is bad on the compressor side, but good on the fan motor side, and that fan motor is loud anyway, the fan blades making noise, the airflow, and you can't tell if the compressor's running or not. Man, you check on one side, the other side, and there's no pressure difference, probably not running the compressor, okay? And we go through, make sure you have a clean condenser, make sure you got subcooling, and you don't have subcooling between there and the meter device. Like I said, you know you've got a problem there. Or once again, like we said before, if your subcooling changes between your condenser outlet and your metering device to any large degree, there's your problem. If your superheat changes anywhere between your evaporator coil and the compressor to any large degree, there's your problem. Okay? Boom. Another page on. Next page is a lot of little stuff that you can't hardly see. Luckily, page is blown up big. If I were you, and I just got that page given to me, for you awesome people at home, what we're talking about is this troubleshooting tree right here. If you have that troubleshooting tree, that troubleshooting checklist, and you had it for the first year for every service call you went to, and you filled that SOB out, and you couldn't figure something out, you know you have a problem big enough that you need help. Not that you want help. There's a lot of times you're going to want help. This would be a time you would need help. You would need a senior service technician to look over your shoulder and go, oh my gosh, you have a problem that I haven't seen but twice in my life. You're going to have a problem that I haven't ever seen before. I've only heard other service technicians talk about it. I have heard of this problem before. Oh, that is, oh wow, I can't believe that's going on. That's going to be one of those. If this checklist right here doesn't get you the right answer, along with my cheat sheet on the very back page, if you can fill this whole thing out and compare it with that cheat sheet and go, wow, I think I just figured it out. I You go over, you do that one little thing, and you're like, boom. And you're like, who's your daddy? Right? Who's the one making the jack? Who's the one getting paid? Because you start knocking these out like a big dog, then they're going to be the guy that's going to let you be on call over the weekend. Because you can do it by yourself. You become the guy doing on call over the weekend, that means you get more overtime. You get more overtime means two things. Number one, you get time and a half or double time, right? Number two, on the average, comfort cooling systems, how many are you going to see that need to be replaced?
Oh, the system needs to be replaced?
System
1 out of 10?
Ooh, you're lazy. 1 out of 4 to 1 out of 5 systems you will run across that will need to be replaced. And if you're making commission on all systems that get replaced, and you're even halfway decent of a salesman, how do I tell you to be a decent salesman?
Kill them with kindness.
Kill them with kindness and be an information agent. Explain to them why. Mrs. Smith, that your unit's 23 years old. They do make parts for yours. They are expensive. We do not manufacture a refrigerant anymore. That R22 refrigerant, it's gone. There's some left. It's super expensive, okay? So yes, we could repair your leak. Yes, we could get you back up and running. No, I cannot legally put a different coil on your system. Why can't I put a different coil on her system?
Can't match refrigerants.
Capacity, size.
Legally. I'm talking legally. Why can't I legally put a new coil on her system? We haven't talked about this that much. We talked about a little yesterday. SEER rating. SEER. Seasonal Energy Efficiency Rating. Government. More government. Okay? Remember we talked about how you have to have 14 SEER or higher. In Arkansas and Missouri, you're still allowed 13 SEER. Okay? So if I replace her coil on her system, I have opened her system up, I have replaced a portion of it, put it back together, and made it work. Does it perform to 14 SEER at this point?
You don't know? Probably not.
Probably not. Even if it's an awesome coil. You know how you prove whether something is 14 SEER or not?
Pressure.
AHRI rating. We would have to have a system that was approved by the AHRI to be 14 SEER. I can't just go and throw a 14 SEER condensing unit on a 10 SEER coil and make it 14 SEER. That doesn't work. As I said yesterday, I can take a 14 SEER condensing unit, a high efficiency coil, a TXV, and a variable speed condensing unit and get 16.5 SEER. Not by my ratings, but by the engineers at the manufacturer and AHRI. I can pump that 14 SEER up. Put it this way. You take my Jeep. If I would have taken my Jeep with the 40-inch tires and left the original gear ratio, do you think I would have had good fuel mileage?
No.
No. I would have gone from 14.5 miles a gallon to maybe 8. If I was lucky, 8. But I have 15.5 miles per gallon with 40-inch tires because I have taken my front hubs and make them unlocking and locking. So that means I'm not turning my whole front drivetrain all the time like a stock Jeep. And it changed my gear ratio to the point where it is back to factory settings. So I get more miles per gallon instead of less miles per gallon with 40-inch tires. Okay? If I would have just added tires to it, it would have screwed it up. And that's how this goes. And so, the guy that's in the front of this building today, Tony Woodard, if Tony and his guys would come to your location and your job site and saw that you messed with the system and lowered its efficiency below 14 SEER of what the new manufacturer specifications are, and you charge them for it, you now get to replace the rest of the system at cost. Isn't that information that the customer needs to know why you can't do that? I can't do it, it's against the law. If I replace portions of your system and not the whole thing and bring it up to code, I'm liable. I cannot do it. That way, if she finds somebody else that will do it, she understands why you would. Of course, there's those people out there who will do things that are shady. We still have police, don't we? Right? I mean, because we still have robbers, we still have cops. We have those people that run around without insurance, without knowledge, without a care in the world, that will do things that people ask them to do because they don't care. They just want to make the money and they'll go on down the road. Okay? What's my time?
2:35.
Okay. So if you inform them why you need to do it, and you kill them with kindness and explain to them, "Ma'am, I understand this is a big thing. I understand you're on a budget. It's going to be $6,000. Here's the reason why," and you get to that point, boom, you just made your commission. Okay, you got your commission, plus you got your overtime, and then you go on down the road. That's why you want to quit being the new guy. You want to quit being the ride along as fast as possible. Number one, the faster I get you away from being the ride along, tag along guy and the newbie to the guy that they think is a service technician, you're making the company money. Corona, let's say you hire me, and the first week I cost you extra money. You're gonna be thinking twice about me, right?
Yeah.
What about the second week I catch something to make you money? Now you're on the fence, right? What if you give me my chance and put me in my own truck away from the other guy, and I make you twice as much money as what I cost you on the first week? You're going to have more faith in me, aren't you? Put the shoe on the other foot. You're the guy costing money the first week. Makes you feel like crap, doesn't it? Yeah. You're scared. You're the new guy. You got 90 days to prove yourself. No. You got 2 weeks. You have 2 weeks. If you come in the first week with an attitude and a chip on your shoulder, you're not going to work last that whole week. You come in the first week and you think you're God's gift to refrigeration. You're not going to last that whole week. You're going to come in that first week and not be able to take whatever the crap the other employees are going to give you. You're not going to miss that whole week. There's one person that really needs to understand that, okay? And he's not here today, and he knows who I'm talking about. You've got to be able to take the shit that everybody else is dishing you. This is blue collar work. This is blue collar world. This is why I give you a bunch of crap every time, okay? I throw stuff at you. I scare the crap out of you when you're starting to doze off and all kinds of stuff because this is the least amount of hazing that you're ever going to get. Okay? I saw a hilarious TikTok yesterday. They made this guy plug and air up the tracks on the skidster. I was sitting there going, oh my gosh. It's like asking for somebody to go get the board stretcher. I hope you guys all know there's no such thing as a board stretcher, and the tracks don't take air. If you don't, and you go along with their gig, take the resin they're giving you. You're the newbie. You're the fresh green horn. Okay? That's the whole thing. It's a rite of passage. The guy that was the newbie before you is going to give you the shit that the guy before him gave him. Okay? It's like being the little brother. But the good thing is there's another little brother that's going to come right behind you and you get to do everything else. Okay? So, you gotta take that on the chin. Number 2, you gotta show that you're willing to work. Even if you're not the best technician and you're willing to work, you can make money, can't you? Okay? Were you the sharpest cookie out of the package? No? Show them you were willing to work?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was even before he hired you, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why he hired me.
That's why he hired you. He saw you in a class setting and willing to come before and after class.
Yes.
Boom. Everybody else got up and left, whether you had to go to class or school or class or school, work or go take care of your kids or whatever. It doesn't matter. He showed extra initiative. First day, got the job. Showed it the second day. Definitely got the job. Came in outside of class and blew it out of the water. Okay? Alright. Mechanical troubleshooting. Next page. It's just really going through what we've been talking about here. Condenser troubleshooting. Once again, we're talking about cleanliness of the coil, fan operation. I mean, realistically, a lot of this is just repeating everything we're talking about. That's why I'm saying, man, just look at it. It's easy to figure out. There's 3 different presentations in this presentation on top of my presentation. So you get it 4 times. I'm giving it to you 4 different ways to read it, to understand it, to see it. Okay? Refrigerant leaks, stuff we talked about. Okay, now we're into TXV troubleshooting. Pretty simple to find. This big gigantic green sheet says TXV troubleshooting. Okay? You know, if you're trying to understand, some of them are adjustable, some of them aren't. If you buy a residential comfort cooling expansion valve, most of the time they're not going to be adjustable. If you're buying a refrigeration expansion valve, they most of the time are adjustable. Okay? You need to understand how to adjust it before you start adjusting an adjustable expansion valve. Duh, right? So I'm going to tell you that, first of all, read the directions for each one before you start using it. There's different directions, there's different models, there's different manufacturers. Danfoss is one of the biggest ones. You're going to be looking at that, and you're going to be trying to understand how to do it. You're going, oh, well, you take the bottom cap off, and oh, okay, great. Well, if you don't get that all nice and sealed up, you got a leak. Make sure you seal it up and get it nice and tight when you put it back together. Don't damage the O-rings. If you do, replace them. Pretty simple. Okay. The next page is going to tell you. It's going to be telling you that there is a right and wrong way to put your bubble on, your little bulb, your temperature sensing device for your expansion valve, or the sensor for your EXV, your electronic expansion valve. Okay? Your TXV bulb needs to be at the 12, the 8, or the 4 position. What are we talking about? Positions on the clock. We're not talking a digital clock. We're talking about one of those round face, old school, old timey, back in the golden days and everything's black and white clocks. I know you guys don't know how to read those anymore. But if you need to, pull up an image on your phone, look at it, and 12 is on top, and 3 is straight out to the side. So one little click down from there would be 4. 9 is straight out to the side, would be 1 click down from there. So not straight out, but just a little bit, not down at the bottom, that's 6, okay? So when people say, I got your 6, this would be your 12, this would be your 6. This would be top, bottom, okay? Okay? So if the pipe is run horizontally, pretty much 360 around it. You can go any position, okay? Because it doesn't really have clock position, you know? Depending on the manufacturer, you see it says okay and also okay, whether the tube is coming out the top or the tube is coming out the bottom. Problem with that is some manufacturers say the bottom one is not okay. Some manufacturers say the top one is not okay. Read the instructions. When the instructions tell you to do it that way, do it that way. Pretty simple, right? All right. You should also make sure that it's clear and full and clear of all debris when you put it. If there's a piece of tape that's on there and you put the bulb on the tape, that bulb is copper, the tube is copper, and let's say you put electrical tape between them. Electrical tape is an insulator. Let's say dirt and debris, it's an insulator. You want to have it nice and clean. You don't want to damage the surface. You just want to slightly clean the surface on both of them, put them together, clamp them together. Clamp them together, don't tape them together. It should have copper clamps that come with it. Put it in there, don't over clamp it, don't bend any of the tube, don't bend the bulb, just clamp it tight, okay? Okay? You cannot put the bulb in the wrong place, okay? If you're putting the bulb in the manifold, like it's showing you there on the bottom of page 112, if it's got the bulb right there on the manifold, that's not after all of it has done its job, okay? That's in the middle. That's the middle of the manifold. You have to do post job, not mid job. Understand? So what we're looking at is on here, our bulb is in the upright position with the device coming off the top of it, and it's after it's left the entire operation. Okay? If you want to get a closer look, you're more than welcome to come up in just a minute and take a look at it. You're going to be using oil traps a lot of times in refrigeration. You need to know where to put it in association with the oil trap. It depends, okay? Depends on your application, what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, okay? Everything else is just talking about having a full column liquid, how it operates. Checking resistance, short ground. Okay. Then we're going to get to electrical. Okay. Checking the compressor out. We've already went through that last semester, but this is just a great refresher, and have it here. All that go through. Okay. Motor and electrical troubleshooting. Okay, we're all the way to this blue one. Okay. That little troubleshooting tree right there is awesome. You go to the next page, there's no troubleshooting tree. I know it's kind of small, kind of hard to read, But that's a great troubleshooting guide to why that compressor's not coming on. The rest of this whole thing right here is explaining that. Okay, we're gonna pass the troubleshooting exercise. That is basically everything we've been talking about here. We can get all the way to, we're not gonna spend any time on the Copeland scroll logic and stuff like that, because that's stuff that you're going to need hands-on understanding. We're gonna go all the way to causes of compressor failure, okay? Causes of compressor failure is the majority of the last of this thing. And the first thing we're going to see is a pie graph. Very simply, electrical, mechanical, field diagnostics, root cause, mechanical, electrical. Okay? Just because people diagnose things the way that they see them doesn't mean that's the real problem. The root cause is almost always a mechanical problem. What's probably 75% of the reason for a mechanical problem? Us. I went to Train Manufacturing, went through their warehouse. They had Snowball. If you guys haven't had a chance to watch the Snowball video, please go out and watch Snowball or Snowball 2. Ran a compressor, ran a frozen walk-in freezer, and a big cube of ice, non-stop for years, okay? They set it up with refrigerant. It was a complete sludging operation. It was crazy. Finally failed years later. But one of the things they do there at the warranty department is they cut that compressor in half, they pull the top shell off of it, and they look at the line in which the refrigerant has been settling. And you can see where the oil line is in there, and it'll have like multiple lines. It'll be over, under, mid, here, there, back. Okay, because so many different people put so much different levels of refrigerant in it. It's whether, and you can see that by how much oil is brought back to the system. We cause that. Okay, so now as you see, he's got that whole compressor torn apart on that next page. You can tell a crap ton from that by looking at things like, go over to the next page, you're going to see the size of the piston. See the scoring on the side of the piston. Okay? Go to the next page. You're going to see that there's damage on the crank. There's damage on the connectors. There's going to be rubbing on the rotor. There's going to be problems on the stator. Okay, you look at the next page on that. You see that shaft goes from good to bad to good, right there at the bad. Okay, that's where it had flooded starts. Bless you. Okay, that means that it was flooded with refrigerant when it started up. Okay, and what ended up happening? It put too much stress. It caused wear on that crank right there. Okay. We can get deeper into it. You can read the whole thing. We don't need to go through the whole thing class. I'm just showing you the importance of this. The next page where it talks about slugging. Okay? I was just talking about slugging before. It's when you're getting liquid coming back. You get slug, slug, slug. Okay? You want to talk about slugging in real life? Drive a diesel engine vehicle uphill in the wrong gear. And they go chug, 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 chug. Okay, that's what you're doing to that engine. Is you're with liquid refrigerant. Okay, and that is those valves there that you can see. picture 1 is the compressor. Picture 2, the one on the right hand side, that's the head. You can see where the valves are slapping the top of that head. Okay. Next picture is a scroll compressor. It is blowed up. Here we're talking about the one side stays still. This is the side that stays still, and the whole wall of that is. Next picture, Jerry. Yeah. That whole wall is completely broken down on that scroll compressor. Okay. The next one, overheating. You can see all the temperature that has changed the color of those components. Okay. We're sounding like we're talking about working on a car a lot, aren't we? Overheating, slugging, valves malfunctioning, hitting the top of the piston. You know, as we look through the next loss of oil, you can see that loss of oil on that next one. You know, we got the next picture is the windings all okay. That's a technical term, by the way. Yeah. Next picture, you can see the windings are all got too hot, and it's called a spot burn. Is where one part has arc to another. It doesn't matter if it's from one to another wire, or there to the case, or there to the rotor, or what. It's spot burn. It had an arc, burned a hole in it. Okay. Refrigerant flood back. Okay. That's where we'll go back to Ryan, what you asked earlier. Why do we not want to have, or what's the problem with our check valve is bad? Here it is. If we're getting flood back from that direction, or from this, if you get liquid coming in from this direction, you're going to start having a problem with the sides of your piston being washed out. Okay. If it's just a little bit, okay, what you're going to have, if you get a lot of refrigerant, liquid refrigerant getting in there, you're of course going to have a lock situation where it's going to try to compress and can't. But it will wash the rings, it will get all the oil off the sides of there, and you'll have lots of wear. In the next picture on the bottom, it'll show you progressive wear, where it'll do it on the first one, worse on the second one, really bad on the third. Okay, it will go in stages because it's progressively getting worse. Because if you wash the oil off the first one, it's not getting to the second one. If it's not getting to the second one, it's definitely not getting to the third one. Okay. We just go through this. The rest of this is really going through just your damages, talking about how to prevent the flooded starts and flood backs. You know, we can get into crankcase heaters. Think of it like a block heater. If you live in Alaska, you better plug your engine in or it's going to freeze up at night. Okay, well, we're doing refrigeration systems and you got a walk-in freezer and you're going to run it in the middle of winter, you probably want to have a crankcase heater in it to keep from everything getting frozen up. Okay? Slugging has great pictures on it. Through that there. There's a great picture of that scroll compressor that's exploded again. Overheating. Getting more in-depth pictures in it. Okay, loss of oil. Run your engine without oil. See how long it lasts. Going to destroy all kinds of cool parts. Normally the new reciprocating compressors will have oil safety switches, kind of like your lawnmower. You try to run your lawnmower, you can't figure out what's wrong with it. You finally look at the oil and out of oil, put oil in it and it starts up. Same thing. Okay? You may need to put a trap in it to keep from the oil from migrating. You're just going to have to look at its application. You're also going to need to look at sludge in the crankcase. If you got a bunch of shit that's in there, you're gonna have a problem, okay? If you got a bunch of dye, if you got refrigerant dye that's just piled up in that crankcase, manufacturer's saying, we don't like that. You're kind of washing out our oil, okay? A little that will do you. Copper plating, that's usually a great symbol of overheat. And you talked about more electric motor problems with burnout, with spot burning, contamination. How you can check it with an acid detector. Okay. And get to the end. Boom. That's it. A good third of this is just stuff that you need to be able to see to be able to diagnose that. That's a pretty decent 3 days run through, right? Now, as we build these systems and we get out there, you at least have some idea and some reference point of where to go back to. I would love for you guys to read through this next few weeks, so as while we're out there starting to do this troubleshooting, you have some of this stuff memorized, okay? So, what time we got?
You got 10.
What's that?
10 till 3.
10 till 3, okay. Do we have questions, thoughts, concerns? What are we thinking? Why did I get in this class? Exactly. Y'all good? Feeling ready to jump out there and start putting some juice in these things and cranking them up and see what we're going to do? Okay. All right. How do you feel about the information I've given you? Do you feel like this application is good? And this is for you guys too. Give me some feedback. Are you feeling like you like the information that you've gotten? You feel shortchanged? Okay. Like I said, everything is in quadruplet. So you're going to see it more than once if you actually read this. So feel free to, once you understand it, you get to that next page and it's the same thing, re-explain it. Feel free to skim over it and not have to deal too much with it. You can always come back and read it more later, okay? I'm not giving you stuff just to give you stuff. I'm giving you stuff I think that will absolutely be a benefit to you guys. Nothing at all?
Well, I think once we read through it some more, actually get it understood, but
Okay.
maybe it's more of a writing lesson.
It's like drinking from a fire hose, isn't it?
Some of it's kind of pretty simple.
Some of it is just as simple as, oh my gosh, it's Thursday. You know? And the rest of it is, holy crap, we went through all that in 3 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay? Just think if you were a night student. You only had 2 days. And then we didn't have class last night, so the guys that had Monday, Wednesday class didn't have Monday class because of MLK Day. And then didn't have class last night, so they're only watching the video. Difference is, I sent them this one with them over the holidays. Why didn't I send this with you guys over the holidays? Because you didn't do the other stuff I asked you to do over the holidays either, did you? No. Okay. You already had the book, you didn't read the book, so I knew you weren't going to read the book and read this. I'm smarter than the average bear. I was the slacker student at one point. I know how this goes. But I have you guys twice as much hours, twice as much study as I have them. That's what this is about, okay? So, literally, I get to cram everything you guys went through in the last 3 days and 2 days with them. They can do it, you can too. Remember, they're competing for the same jobs that you guys are all competing for. Their open house is your open house.